This video gives a run-through of the Samsung U28D590D's OSD on-screen display menu system. The menu is controlled by an intuitive little joystick, or what Samsung refer to as a jog button, just here, which you can operate with the fingers of your right hand from a normal viewing position. And it's something that we find very easy to control. It's a very easy way of quickly changing the settings on the monitor. If you twiddle that up, down, left or right, it brings up this quick menu here, which gives you access to simple controls like brightness adjustment, contrast and sharpness. You press that again, that menu goes away. And you can adjust volume for the 3.5mm headphone jack, or you can see the status of the game mode there, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. And if you press the menu button, it brings up this thing here, which has 4 options: source selection, power off, picture-in-picture or picture-by-picture mode, and the main menu. Now, the main menu is fortunately one of the more readable things on the monitor. We talk about scaling in a dedicated article all about the 4K UHD resolution, but I'm running the monitor in its native mode without any scaling at the moment, and you can probably just about see from the video that the icons are absolutely tiny, the desktop icons there. The taskbar also very small, and the clock, which you can't see because it's bleached out thanks to my background, but it's just in the corner there, absolutely tiny. The menu, however, is nice and readable, which is good. The menu is quite nicely laid out. Again, using this little joystick, it's also very easy to navigate through. So first off, there's a picture menu, which lets you adjust various settings such as the brightness, contrast and sharpness. And there's a little box on the right hand side here which reminds you exactly what each setting does, which is it's a nice little touch, and it also makes explaining this all of these features here on the video a bit easier as well. One thing that's worth noting is that the sharpness of the control, as usual for modern Samsung monitors, allows you to adjust the sharpness in increments of 4, which gives you quite a fine control of the sharpness. Personally, I find a setting of 60 works fine, which is the default. You can activate the game mode, which Samsung says optimizes image settings for playing games, which is quite ambiguous, but what it actually does is it enhances the sharpness of the image. I say enhances, it increases the sharpness of the image, making things look sharper than they should. It also increases the colour saturation, so things look less realistic. And that also crushes your variety of shades that you'll see in the game. So personally, I'm not a fan of this game mode at all. I should also note that it does nothing whatsoever to the responsiveness of the monitor, so it's not worth turning it on for that sort of benefit. So basically, yeah, I'd leave that off. Then there's Samsung's Magic Bright settings, which are their main presets. There are only 4 to choose from here, and we talk about some of them in the review. There's a magic angle setting, which is available on all of Samsung's twisted pneumatic monitors, and the original intention of this is really to adjust the gamma of the monitor to suit various different viewing positions. Because TN panels have a sort of shift in gamma depending on the viewing angle, which is most noticeable if you're looking at the monitor from various different off-center viewing angles, they've made these modes to suit different sort of viewing positions. For example, lean back mode 1, from a normal viewing position you can see that the image becomes much lighter, so the gamma's decreased, whereas if you lean back from the monitor a bit, it sort of cancels that out a bit. They also have one for a slightly more pronounced effect for people that are leaning back even more, a standing mode setting which increases the gamma and makes the monitor a lot darker, but if you stand up, again it cancels that out. There's one that does the same from the side, and one called group view, which is designed for a sort of middle ground setting, really, for when people are all around you bugging you. And there's custom, speaking of bugging, custom mode, which is actually bugged on this monitor, as we mentioned in the review, so just ignore that one. Yep, there's also a colour menu. Again, we're still on the picture settings here, so there's quite a few picture settings to go through. This lets you individually adjust the colour channels, red, green and blue. You can set a predefined colour tone. For example, there's warm 2 and warm 1. Warm 2 I actually quite like using in the evening because it gives the image a much warmer look. It reduces the colour temperature and reduces the amount of blue light outputted from the monitor, which is good for sort of relaxing evening viewing. And there's a normal viewing setting which returns all of the colour channels to their default value of 50, which is the neutral position. And there are some cool settings which I don't really think have much application for most users. And of course custom, which lets you change things yourself. There are also 3 gamma modes, and as Samsung say, adjust the middle level of luminance. So basically these adjust the relative shade brightness of all shades other than black and white on the monitor. And we talk about them a bit more in the review. There's HDMI black level, which is greyed out because I'm using a DisplayPort connection, which is required on this monitor for a 60Hz image, because it doesn't have HDMI 2.0 and neither does my graphics card. There's a response time setting here, which again we'll talk about in the review, and that basically adjusts the level of grey to grey acceleration that the monitor uses. The description Samsung gives you there is a little bit misleading because it doesn't really change the colours to make them more vivid and natural. I suppose it does when it's in motion relative to other settings, other slower settings, but that's not really a very good way of describing it. Next up, there's the screen menu. The first option there is image size, which is an aspect ratio setting for the monitor. And all that really allows you to do is, if you're viewing content in a square aspect ratio, is you can either keep it in its normal aspect ratio, or you can force it to stretch to fit the wide screen. There isn't any one-to-one pixel mapping feature or anything like that. So, for example, if you were viewing a full HD resolution on the monitor, you wouldn't have these massive black borders around it. It would always stretch to fit the screen using interpolation. I suppose the black borders would be absolutely massive, given that the screen has 4 times as many pixels as full HD anyway, so you probably wouldn't really want to do that, even if you could. There is H position and V position, which are greyed out. I believe they're available if you're using one of these image size auto settings and you've got a little bit of a black border, so you can adjust where on the screen the image is shown. There's a picture-in-picture / picture-by-picture mode, which isn't something I personally like using because I have no reason to use it really, and I like to use the full real estate and the full resolution of the monitor. But it's there, and it's quite a good implementation for those who like to use it. So if I turn it on, you can see that on the left side of the screen is my output from my computer. On the right side is nothing. That's because I only have one device connected to the monitor, and that's my main PC. But this allows you to connect more than one device to the monitor at the same time. You're limited to 2 devices actually. You can adjust the size, how the image is displayed, and basically you can see there, that's what I've got at the moment. That's picture by picture, and there are 3 different picture-in-picture settings. For example, if I select this one, my main image takes up most of the screen, but if I had another device connected, it would show in the top left corner in this reasonably large box here. And you can adjust the position of that box if you want it in the top right, bottom left, or bottom right instead of the top left. You can control which of your screens is the sound source, which of your devices is the sound source, sorry. And you can control which source everything's using. And if I change this to the picture-in-picture mode, and I go back on the source thing, you get this slightly nicer little graphic here where you can choose the source of each of the screens. And again, you can independently change the aspect ratio setting for the two things. And you can also independently adjust the contrast of each of your sources, which is a nice little addition there. And that is the picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture mode, which I will turn off now. And the next setting, options, aren't really too many options to choose from here. You can choose the language of the display. You can change how long the OSD is displayed on the screen before it disappears. I've got it set to 200 seconds so I can run you through the features on the video. You can set it to 20 seconds, 10 seconds or 5 seconds. And you can remove this transparency effect if you don't like it. Settings menu, there are a few more things here. There's eco saving, which essentially it only has 2 different settings here. There isn't an ambient light sensor on this monitor, so it doesn't automatically adjust things. It's just a way to quickly give a little power saving. For example, minimum, it's a bit confusing the way they word it, but minimum gives you a minimum power saving. It actually sets the screen to a slightly higher brightness than I use for my test settings anyway. Or maximum, which dims the screen quite a lot and will give you maximum power saving or eco saving. There's a little setting here, set to AV to enlarge the picture. That's basically if you've got an audio-visual device connected, like usually some older games consoles, for example, you can make sure they get displayed in AV mode, which will try and enlarge the picture so you're using the whole of the monitor and don't have black borders. You can ask the monitor to automatically detect and use a certain input, or you can manually select the input if you prefer. And a number of other features. Here there's an off timer, which allows you to set the screen to go on standby after a given amount of time. You can set that between anything between 1 and 24 hours. I'll turn that off before I forget that it's on, because I don't want my screen to turn off until I tell it to. Thank you. There's a power LED status setting as well. By default that's actually set to standby. Although it says standby, it's what most people would consider when the monitor is off. It's not in its low power state. For example, you just turn your computer off, you've still got your monitor on, you don't bother switching it off. That's not what it means by standby. By standby, it actually means you've actually told the monitor to switch off, and then a bit confusingly the power indicator will then come on. But usually when you've got the screen on and you know it's on because it's displaying an image, perhaps you don't want that power LED. So in that case you can choose the working setting, and then it'll be on when the monitor's on, and when the monitor's off or it's on standby, it won't be on. There isn't an option, unfortunately, to have it off all the time if you don't like this fairly bright little power LED here. I mean, I don't mean to put you off or anything, it's not hugely distracting, it's just I know some people don't like power LEDs very much. And there's a setting here to reset everything to default. And finally, there's simply information which just tells you what source the monitor is using, the refresh rate of the monitor and the resolution. So there you have it. That's a run through of the Samsung U28D590D's OSD menu system. And actually, just before I go, because some people might be wondering this, if you do want to turn off the monitor, there isn't a power button. You actually use the joystick, the jog button. You push that in once, and then it gets this menu up. You select power by twiddling the jog down, and then click again, and then it goes off.